time for another podcast by George. Straight talk, straight from the heartland, that'll have you saying, by George, I think he's got it. Now, here's George.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on in to another podcast by George. Got a great show for you today. Got another great returnee, a guy that I really like having on here. All knowledgeable about the plague. It's guns, folks. Guns, guns, guns is the title of this show. And that's also the title of a great song by, the Guess Who? Burton Cummings. Yeah, check it out. You can go find that on YouTube. Guns, guns, guns. 400 million guns in this nation, folks. We are awash in firearm hardware, and we are reaping what we've sown. And we've got to do something about it. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. It is getting worse. And we're going to talk about that with the great Joe Gorton. He's coming up here very shortly. I just wanted to start off with this segment. I got to do these kind of housekeeping things on the news because I couldn't do the show without doing this. This is what I call what in the hell. Okay, folks, here it is. We made the funny papers. We're in the national news here in Iowa because of the GOP-controlled Iowa legislature. Iowa Republicans push profoundly cruel and petty food benefit restrictions. Maybe you saw this in the news. I talked about it briefly on the show last week. Under the new legislation, Iowans would no longer be allowed to purchase fresh meat, white grains, canned fruits, American cheese, and other foods with SNAP benefits. Now, this is out of Common Dreams, folks. This is bad. This is nationwide. We're making news. Republicans in the Iowa House introduced legislation this month that would impose a slew of fresh restrictions on the kinds of food people can purchase using SNAP benefits, sparking outrage among local groups who say the measure would exacerbate hunger in the GOP-dominated state. Yeah, that's us. The Des Moines Area Religious Council, DMARC, an interfaith group that operates the largest food pantry network in Iowa, noted in a statement earlier this week that if the bill passes, Iowans could no longer use their SNAP benefits to purchase meat, nuts, and seeds, flour, butter, cooking oil, soup, canned fruits and vegetables, frozen prepared foods, snack foods, herbs, spices, not even salt or pepper. This is a punitive policy that will do nothing to improve the health and nutrition of Iowans, but rather be a detriment, the group said. And for me personally, and I included a little bit of this on my homeless segment that I did last week on homelessness. Mike, I don't know what the hell people are thinking of. I mean, you're resentful and you're jealous of somebody that's using a food pantry that's going to get food for themselves and their kids. And we're the most morbidly obese society in the history of humankind. And you're jealous of somebody that's going to buy some or pick up some free cheese, for God's sake. According to Feeding America, the largest hunger relief organization in the U.S., roughly 229,500 people, including 80,160 children. Kids, folks. Girls and boys and little bitty babies. They're facing food insecurity right here in Iowa. The details of the new legislation, which is sponsored by 39 Iowa House Republicans, including Speaker Pat Grassley, was met with national anger. This is so profoundly cruel and petty, said Leah Greenberg, co-executive director of the progressive advocacy group Indivisible, which I know a lot of my viewers are. If they don't belong to it, they're well aware of it. Sarah Bowen, a sociologist who studies food and inequality, noted in a tweet on Thursday that Republicans have tried to destroy SNAP for years, animated by the lie that SNAP recipients are all stocking up on lobster and steak. I have heard this. I mean, I don't get it. I really don't understand it. You've got them that got it, and you got them that don't. Them that got it got more than they've ever had before. I mean, they are reaping the benefits of everything. They are farming the government. They are living high on the hog. And here they are wanting to deny cheese to them that ain't got it. This is the most ridiculous proposal I've seen through, Bowen added. No chicken or ground beef, no chili beans, no American cheese. Yeah, for whatever reason, don't ask me why they singled out American cheese. I'm going to talk about this. How big is the U.S. cheese stockpile? A lot of people don't even know that we have one. Listen to this. As of August 2022, the U.S. had 1.5 billion. That's B, folks, billion pounds of cheese in cold storage across the country. That's about $3.4 billion worth of cheese in storage. Using data from USDA, they've got a graphic that shows just how big the U.S. cheese stockpile has gotten over the last few years and compared it to notable landmarks to help put things in perspective. Well, it's basically cheese stacked up higher than the Eiffel Tower. I mean, it's unbelievable. Now, before diving into the data, we'll take a step back to quickly explain why America's cheese stockpile has gotten so big in the first place. Why so much cheese? Over the last 30 years, milk production in the U.S. has increased by 50%. Why? A lot of it has to do with the dairy industry being underwritten, being subsidized, getting all of these tax incentives, getting all of the slop money that they got from Trump, particularly, but they've been continuing to get it. So they're staying in business, folks. They're producing more milk than anybody wants or needs. Yet while the milk production has climbed, milk consumption has declined. In 2004, Americans consumed the equivalent of about 0.57 cups of milk per day. By 2018, average milk consumption dropped 0.33 cup equivalents. In response to the predicament, the U.S. government and dairy companies have been purchasing the extra milk and storing it as cheese for years. So where does one store such a large amount of cheese? Now get this. A sizable portion of the stockpile is stored in a massive underground warehouse, a former limestone quarry outside of Springfield, Missouri. Did you know that? 1.5 billion pounds of cheese. The stockpile keeps growing. Apart from a small dip in 2021 during the global pandemic, America's stockpile of cheese has increased steadily over the last 5 years. Now, attempts have been made to get rid of the cheese stockpile. And again, it's because of the milk. It's because of the dairy industry. Over the years, the government has established federal food welfare programs and encouraged milk consumption in schools throughout the country. Yet, despite their best efforts to decrease the surplus, America's cheese stockpile continues to grow. As domestic concerns continue to decrease the milk consumption and switch out their dairy milk for milk alternatives like almond, oat milk, how much bigger this cheese stockpile will get before the government comes up with alternative solutions to deal with the surplus of dairy. Okay, what's one great way to deal with the surplus of the dairy? Give it to these SNAP benefits. Give them cheese, for God's sake. Give them all they want. We've got it stacked up as high as the Eiffel Tower in an underground bunker someplace in Springfield, Missouri. But it dovetails very nicely with today's show because it has to do with the uncaring, the insensitivity of Americans when it comes to their fellow man and woman. And with these guns, everybody wants their guns. Nobody wants to give them up. And my God, the carnage and the slaughter is continuing. So let's get to our guest here. Let's get him up on screen. There's his graphic. Joe Gorton is a professor emeritus of criminology at the University of Northern Iowa and the state lead for Brady United against gun violence here in Iowa. We've had him on before. He's just great. Let me click a couple of buttons here, see if I can get this off the screen, and we'll bring Joe up just as soon as I make that change. I know I can do it. There he comes. Hi, Joe Gorton. How you doing, pal?
I'm well, George. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. The new year is off and running. And one of the things I thought about, and you just have to read a newspaper to know it, Joe, is the body count is beginning anew. They tend to keep these statistics on the carnage from gun violence on an annual basis. And we have already gotten off to a very bad start. Let me bring this up on screen, Joe. The manhunt has ended out there in California. Monterey Park, California, Dateline AP. Authorities searched for a motive. I'm going to get Joe's opinion on this. Now, these highlights are mine. For the gunman who killed 10 people at a Los Angeles area ballroom dance club during Lunar New Year celebrations, slayings that sent a wave of fear through Asian American communities and cast a shadow over festivities nationwide. And that's for you and I. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more shortly here with this story. But Joe, I wanted you to talk about this motive thing. I've talked about that on my show before. Whenever one of these things take place, they always want to try to find a motive. And I'm always like, what in the hell? This is a nut. This is a crazy person. I don't know what kind of motive you're searching for or what difference it would make. What needs to be addressed here is the gun issue. And they seem to overlook that, hoping to find out maybe that, the guy had some skeleton in his closet that made him do this. And even if he did, what difference does it make? The people are dead. He's dead. He's crazy to do something like this. And I've never understood this emphasis on motive. What's your reaction to that?
Well, George, I've studied rampage killings as a criminologist, and every time I hear the media ask, well, or say, police are still searching for a motive, I always just want to say, well, look, the motive is fairly straightforward. It's just to kill as many people as possible. That's the motive. Now, what happens with rampage killers is they will, and not just rampage killers, by the way, but people who are frustrated and desperate in their lives. A certain segment of those people will, kind of fantasize about engaging in terrible acts of violence, right? But what happens with the rampage killers, eventually they get to the point to where maybe they'll plan it out and think about it more, maybe even, take some steps in that direction. But even then, a lot of those folks will probably, fall off of that plan and not carry through. But what happens with the rampage killer is there's a precipitating event. He gets fired, his wife divorces him. It could be anything, he becomes broke suddenly. And that triggering event then will put the person in the mood to where they're just say, I'm angry at everybody in the world. Or it could be a place of employment. It could be, I'm just angry at these, and then they're off, and then they go off. So their only motive is just to respond to this, terrible amount of anger, uncontrollable anger that they have. Now, here's the thing about these people. Yeah. They don't just exist in the United States. Yeah. They exist in Canada, Europe, everywhere. But in those countries, guns are not as accessible as they are here. So if you're someone who's feeling this kind of sense of anger and fantasizing about, going on a rampage, you might have to get a knife, but you're not going to be able to walk into a club and slaughter 10 people and wound many more, right? Yeah. But in the United States, you can go right down the street anywhere and pick up an assault rifle. Now, this guy used a Mac 11. This is what I've read from news reports.
Yeah, we get
Mac
into
11 is manufactured by a military armament corporation. It was originally designed as a small submachine gun. As a submachine gun, it'll fire 1,200 rounds a minute. So it's built and designed to kill a lot of people as effectively as possible. And we don't know where he got it from, but not hard to get those weapons in the United States. All too easy.
Yeah. I hate to wax depressive here at the beginning of the new year, but I mentioned this on my show before. I mean, it's Happy New Year, but I'm not seeing a lot of happiness on a lot of the issues that I'm concerned about. And guns is one of them. The way that I put it to people, Joe, and you may disagree with this, but I tell everybody, everyone that owns a gun is not a nut, but every nut in this country now owns a gun. How do we know that? There's 400 million guns, folks. There's only 300 million people. And when it comes to the gun issue, I tell folks, the horse has left the barn. I mean, it's gone over the horizon. We stood by when we perhaps could have done something about this, talking about Brady United with the Brady bill back in the 80s or so. But I don't know what the hell can be done about it now, because guns last forever. There are collectors that have guns from the times they were, first made, when they were pounded out on a forge someplace. There are people in my neighborhood that have guns from the Civil War, for God's sake. I mean, I don't know what we do to correct this situation, but I got a sense that we're kind of late. Now, I want to bring this article back up because I've got some more highlights here I wanted you to comment on, Joe. The massacre in Monterey Park was the nation's 5th mass killing this month. Yeah. I'm still, I still got this decoration up here. Let me show this. I still got the holiday fest. This is still January, folks. This is the 5th this month. A lot of people are unaware of that. Let me get this back up on screen now. This article says that It struck one of California's largest celebrations of a holiday observed in many Asian cultures, dealing another blow to a community that has been a target of high-profile violence in recent years. Okay, Joe, again, with your understanding of criminology and these guns and these shootings that take place, it feeds every type of fear and hatred there is. It's connected. This is a racism type killing, but there are a lot of there's even ageism killings. There's sexism killings. There's anything that you can think of. It's connected. So it does involve race a lot of times, but not always. It can involve any form of hatred in this country.
Well, George, I try to keep track of these type of rampage killings and mass murders, but it's almost impossible now because they happen so frequently. Probably anybody listening, the very few people listening to this broadcast or watching it will not even know that a couple of weeks ago, a law-abiding citizen, by the way, you're a law-abiding citizen until you're not. A law-abiding citizen in Utah murdered his wife and his 2 children and himself, and I believe also mother-in-law. I'm not sure, but just a rampage killing. And this was probably someone, when you look at the pictures of him, if you see him out on the street or you know him as part of your church or whatever, you would never suspect that this is someone who's going to engage in this kind of behavior. So I think 2 things are going on. One is, as you say, the plethora. I mean, it's just the massive infusion of firearms into this country. And, when you travel to other countries and you talk to people, they don't understand. Why do you have so many guns in America? What is wrong with you people? And it's a hard question to answer, but there are a lot of answers. That's what makes it hard. There are so many. But the other part of it is that, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm a sociologist, but I do believe that social conditions are changing such in the past really 30 years with the changes in the economy and the labor market, that especially I think, middle-aged men are having a harder time. And I think white men are losing their sense of privilege in the economy, their entitlement, their sense
power.
of entitlement.
Yeah,
that's right. And so when that happens, they, most people are going to be able to deal with that and move along and adjust and adapt. But there are always going to be those who can't. There are always going to be those. We had a family annihilation murder here in Des Moines just about 2-3 years ago, where a guy who worked for the DPS, probably everybody loved him, salt of the earth, he murdered his 2 children and his and his wife. And I just think sort of we're living in a time where it's harder for people to kind of keep a grip. Culture is changing so fast, the economy is changing so fast, technology is changing so fast, and all this rapid change is making it difficult. But that's in every advanced democracy of the world, okay? Every one of them. The difference between us is anyone can get a gun, and not just a gun, but an assault rifle whenever they want it. So that's part of the problem. Now, as to the solution, we talked about this the other day. I've been doing this for a few years now in Iowa, but I've been involved in gun violence issue for quite a long time. And, I have to say that the more that I'm involved in this, the more it makes me think about America and what's going on with our country, that we are willing to tolerate, for instance, 300 children a year between the ages of infant and 12, just little kids, being shot to death. Now, most people don't have any idea what that means, to be shot to death. And these children are sometimes murdered. They've seen their mother be killed first, and then they're murdered, or their mother sees them be killed. Just the sound of gunshots.
Yes.
But we are willing to tolerate this. I go to speaking engagements and I mention this, and it's just like, because I started talking about that instead of statistics. People's eyes glaze over. Well, guess what? They glaze over when you talk about 300 children being shot to death. And I'm not talking about teenagers who might be carrying guns. I'm talking about little kids, elementary school age kids. So part of what is really troubling me is, what is it in America that isn't present as it used to be, where we, back in the progressive era in the 20s, We built public health systems, modernized schools. We did so many things to make America a nation that could build out with a modern economy and a civil society. And we're losing that sense of civility because we will tolerate almost anything now, it seems to me.
Well,
And
we'll talk.
and that's what bothers me,
Yeah.
and the right wing, and the gun militants, their response to it is more guns. Let's pour more fuel on the fire.
My God.
And so it's
That's the house of mirrors that we live in. That's exactly right. They're telling us our safety exists in more guns, but of course, that's what got us here. And you talk about this insensitivity, this uncaringness. It couldn't be illustrated more clearly than people wanting to deny cheese to SNAP benefits. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And let me say something about those 80,000 children who are going to have
yes,
their nutrition is going to be assaulted here. Now, those 80,000 children are already living in impoverished environments, and I will tell you that what will happen is many of those kids will become more embittered, more alienated. Their aspirations for conventional success will decline because their school performance will decline. And one of the things we know about juvenile delinquency is it is directly related to a child's aspirations for conventional success. So if you're a 10-year-old kid and you kind of already give up on the probability that maybe you can have a good construction job, or go to college, or make the best of the talents that you have for understanding mathematics and things, but you already see those doors shutting. Guess what? You're going to find some other way to express those skills. And what we have in the poorest parts of the country, not only in urban areas but in some rural areas, are these replacement markets that are drug transactions, that are drugs. And so you step into that market. Well, that's a dangerous market. You better be strapped. So all of these things are connected together. And meantime, most Americans, and here's the rub, George. Here's the bad part of this. This is the saddest part of this to me. So one asks, well, why do you think we don't care? Is it these changing times you talked about? Well, maybe, but the big difference between now and the progressive era of the 20s is, for Americans today, if it doesn't affect them, it doesn't exist. All right. So let's be completely straight about this. Most of the victims of gun violence are low-income minorities or low-income families. All right. They're not families like yours, George, or mine. All right. And we just don't, it doesn't affect us. It affects the other. Now, not all social movements are like that. You take the pro-life movement, for instance. That was a very successful social movement because and as we know, it was very successful, too successful in my opinion. But what happened with the pro-life movement is pro-life activists identified with the issue, now, primarily through religious means, through their religious understanding of the issue. All right. But when it comes to something like gun violence, that doesn't exist. And that's people have to care about someone that child is being shot to death.
And it is economics to a great extent. I've had economists on my show and they talk about, it's not for the economy. It's not having a lot. It's just having more than someone else. It's just keeping yourself above somebody else. So this is what they're trying to do, is just keep someone else down so that they can appear to or feel good about the fact that they have more. And it's not my world. I don't get it because, I've been a hunter. I've owned guns in the past. Yeah. You could take every gun that I ever had. You could take every gun that I'll ever have and take it to a smelter if it would save the life of one child. I mean, it just is not that big a deal to me. Other people, the vast majority of these gun owners that we're talking about in this country, if you tried to take their gun from them, they'll shoot you with it. I mean, that's how big a difference it is for me. Now, let me read this article out here. I want to get to moving on to some other things here. This one that we're talking about out there in California, folks, was the deadliest attack since May 24th, when 21 people were killed in an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. We had Joe on back then to talk about that. And here's this motive thing again. Los Angeles County Sheriff Robert Luna said the motive remained unclear for the attack, which wounded 10 people. Speaking in a Sunday evening news conference, Luna said all of the people killed appeared to be over 50. No other suspects were at large, according to the sheriff. The suspect was carrying what Luna described, and Joe talked about this, a semi-automatic pistol with an extended magazine, and a second handgun was discovered in the van where the dude died. So it does have something to do with the type of weaponry, the accessibility, the availability of it. And that is the end of that story. Now, here is another one that I wanted to bring up to talk to Joe about. Walmart shooting victim's mom gunman threatened the daughter. And this is these strange domestic. Evansdale, Indiana, the mother of a Walmart employee who was shot and wounded by a former co-worker inside a Walmart store in Indiana says the gunman had repeatedly threatened to kill her daughter. Jenny Couch told WFIE TV that her daughter, 28-year-old Amber Cook, was targeted by Ronald Ray Mosley II because he was in love with her boyfriend. When the boyfriend told Mosley that he wasn't interested in him romantically, Mosley became angry with Cook and threatened to kill her, she said. He kept sending my daughter messages, anonymous, everything. He kept calling her, telling her that he was going to kill her, that he watched her walk her dog, Couch told the Evansville station Friday. According to the Evansville Police Department, 25-year-old Mosley walked into a store break room where employees were meeting Thursday night and shot Cook in the face with a gun, with a 9mm handgun. Another employee escaped the room and called 911. Law enforcement officers responded within minutes and fatally shot Mosley. There were about 40 employees and 40 shoppers in the store at the time. And this goes on. I don't think I'm going to continue to read all of this, but this again speaks to the fact that we're not being made more safe. We're completely unsafe. That one kind of got to me because I go to Walmart once in a while, Joe, and I always think God love the people that are working there. I mean, for the people that are willing to go in there and deal with the public and work in these stores, I mean, that's they deserve more pay for sure. And they deserve medals for doing what they do. And here's somebody just trying to do a job, just trying to work, sitting in a break room at a Walmart, and somebody walks in and shoots him in the face, Joe.
Yeah. Well, sadly, and we would categorize this as an act of intimate partner violence, even though he might not have had a relationship with the woman or the man. I mean, that was another one of these killings, which are all too common, where men give themselves permission to have a sense of ownership and domination over a woman, usually, but this happens in gay relationships on occasion as well. And it sounds like I'm just sort of reading between the lines of this homicide, and I have read about it, but I kind of have the feeling that this person may have had some significant mental health problems, that he'd been in contact with the mental health system in the past. And there are a couple of ways to go with this, but I want to say one thing, because one thing I was interested in discussing today, in terms of, because you asked this question, what can we do about it? I'm also, in addition to my concern about a lack of compassion in America for these gun violence deaths, and I just wish more people knew what it was like to see someone shot or to be shot yourself, or, I just wish more, how can I say, mainstream America really knew about that, because it's not like what they see on television. And part of the reason, this brings me to this, is this. I also am really concerned about how the mainstream media deals with gun violence.
Yes.
Take, for instance, now let's take this case here in the Walmart in Evansdale. There's not going to be a follow-up on that case. There's not going to be a follow-up on how that person got that gun. Did he lawfully own it? Okay. Did he have mental health problems? Right. Because the more that we would do this, the more people would start to understand that, gee, maybe too many people are getting their hands on guns that they shouldn't have. Right. Was this person mentally ill? If they were mentally ill and they lawfully bought the gun, which happens many more times than you would think, what's that about? And I'll give you an example of this. Another example. We had this family annihilation in Makita Caves a few months ago, right? You familiar with what I'm talking about, George?
Yep.
So for people who don't know, So we had a family from Cedar Falls, Iowa, where I live, who went on a camping trip to
Yeah.
is it Makita? Is that how it's pronounced?
Well, what was that, Makokata? I mean, that was a
Makokata,
campground.
Makokata. So
They
they were
didn't. Yeah.
camping, and there was another family there that had traveled from, I believe it was Nebraska, and they were there. And there was a young man, and there was a mom and a dad, and their son who was about 20 years old or so. I'm not sure, but in any event, what law enforcement has said, and what I'm pretty sure is probably exactly what happened during the middle of the night. This young man left the tent or wherever they were staying, his family was staying, and went to the tent of this family like very early in the morning, like about 4 or 5 in the morning, and he killed them all. Okay.
Wasn't there a child that did survive?
There was one child. You're right.
Yeah.
There was a little boy, 9 or 10-year-old, and he escaped. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, here's the thing: the weapon he used was a ghost gun. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
That's right. You don't, because the media hasn't talked about it. And a ghost gun, for people who don't know, is a gun that's manufactured. Usually, it's manufactured in a home. It doesn't have a serial number. It's not traceable. There are more aspects to it, but that's basically, it was a ghost gun. Now, here's the thing about the media on this: they've not done any follow up on this story. Okay. Now, I find it impossible to believe. It's very hard for me to believe that family drove with their son to this place, and they didn't know that he had a firearm that he had made. And the question is, if he really enjoyed firearms, why didn't he just go out and purchase one? Now, maybe there are good reasons for this, but maybe he was so mentally ill that he couldn't purchase one, so he made one, and that his family knew he made one. I don't know the answer to that, but the media should dig into it, right? And they should report the background on these stories. The shooting that happened in California yesterday, there should be some digging into that, but that doesn't happen, especially since the shooter has apparently now killed himself. So we don't learn the backstory. And I think if we learned the backstory, more people would be outraged about how easy it is for some really deranged people to so easily get guns that then they turn upon innocent people.
Yeah, and I would like to see it all connected in some way. Again, as I mentioned earlier, people believe that guns are making us more safe. It's getting to be, and this will come up in an article that I have loaded if we can get to it. You go to any public place, you go to a campground, you're in a tent, for God's sake, with your family overnight, you're at risk because there's 400 million guns in this country, folks, and every crazy person has one. And when I read that campground killing, I was kind of interested in the motive to begin with. And I'm, well, why the hell would somebody do something like that? And I thought to myself, like, the guy's crazy. I mean,
Yes.
that's what your motive is. You don't need to go any further than this. Let me bring this up on screen.
But George, he's crazy. So how did he get the gun?
Yeah, how does a crazy person get a gun?
That's the part that the media is dropping the ball on.
Good point. Nearly 400,000 people, this is reporting in UPI, have been killed this year. That would have been last year. Let me reread that. Nearly 40,000 people have been killed this year as a result of gun violence, as mass shootings have permeated all areas of life, from schools to grocery stores to holiday celebrations. You read articles like this and you don't think. I think once in a while, Joe, and I thought when I read this one, my God, you have any idea what 40,000 dead people would look like if you had them on the ground, if you stored them, if you stacked the bodies? Get a visual on this, folks. 40,000 human beings. My God, that is unbelievable. Now, after the Colorado Springs shooting, President Joe Biden issued yet another call for gun reform, which Republicans in Congress have repeatedly failed to address despite the massacres. Today, yet another community in America has been torn apart by gun violence. More families left with an empty chair at the table and hole in their lives that cannot be filled, he said. When will we decide we've had enough? We must address the public health epidemic of gun violence in all of its forms. Now, that was from Biden. And I guess, Joe, just briefly, if you could talk about it. I mean, partisanship comes into everything. Is this gun violence thing partisan, or is this bipartisan? Is this across the board? The Democrats talk a lot. They're known for that. They don't tend to act very much. The Republicans tend to do what they do. They don't lie about it. They don't stab you in the back. They just stab you in the front when they do stuff. That's the way the Republican parties are. So talk about the political ramifications here.
Well, I'm so glad you brought it up, because I think the politics of this are starkly different within the two parties. I mean, the Republican Party is just absolutely 100% committed to a complete laissez-faire attitude toward guns. All right. They just, but it's not just that they support it. I mean, they support it with real vigor. On the other hand, Democrats will be in private discussions with community groups and says, I agree, we need more gun control. And then they try to blame it on Republicans, but they don't fight. Okay. Now, this is a little different in Congress, but in Iowa, for instance, I mean, there are a couple of good members of the state legislature. Artstead is one of them, and there are some others. Okay. But they don't really get in and fight about this the way Republicans do. And I know they're in the minority. I understand that. But guess what? The pro-life movement was in the minority many years ago. Look what they've accomplished, right? I mean, when you're in the minority, it doesn't mean you fight less. It means you fight more, okay? And that's part of the problem. Now, this goes back to another point I've made, though, George. I want to say this. And I've been involved in political activism. I've been in the legislature. I've been a union boss, if you will, a union representative. And there's one thing that is true about politics is this: politicians aren't going to do anything they're not made to do. So the reason why Republicans are so, have so much vitriol and a commitment to their approach to guns is because they're forced to. The gun militants, the NRA, the gun industry, they're on them like tea on Texas. They don't mess around. And if you're a Republican and you don't support their view of the Second Amendment and their view about making guns accessible to everybody, they're going to get rid of you. You're going to be out of office. Whereas Democrats, on the other hand, we don't vote on that issue. I mean, it's not only not a single issue, it's not even in the top 10. All right. And I understand that. But I mean, I understand why that is. There are big issues: school vouchers, food distribution. I mean, there are a lot of problems, the economy, but my God, that we can't make gun violence a central and unassailably non-negotiable issue among Democrats, to me, is a disgrace. Wow. And but again, the Democrats aren't going to do it. The disgrace, I know politicians, I understand them. It's hard for me to just like point the finger at them alone, because this is the reality. They're not going to do anything they're not made to do. Sure, they want to present themselves as honorable, virtuous, servants of the people. Look, they're going to do what they're made to do, either by contributions or withholding support or whatever. And we're just not doing that as voters. We're just not doing it.
Well, and it goes to these other issues that we talked about. I mean, so you maybe not in your top 10 is gun violence. You care about women's rights. You care about women's issues. They're being slaughtered by the thousands, folks, with these guns. Racism, same type of thing.
Read is we probably lose about 4,000 women to intimate partner violence, gun violence a year. It's hard to get the data on it, but that's the best estimate. Now think about that: 4,000 women shot to death in intimate partner violence.
Let me bring this up on screen, Joe, because this goes again to the House of Mirrors. Again, it's very hard to believe that people can't connect these dots. It does affect us. I mean, let me read this. In Washington, Dateline, Washington, this is from the American Psychological Association. Get this big enough here that I can read it. A large majority of adults in the United States are stressed by mass shootings. Well, yeah, who wouldn't be if you read it or look at the news? A third of U.S. adults say the fear of mass shooting stops them from going to certain places and events, according to a new survey on stress and mass shootings by the American Psychological Association. Okay, this is the land of the free, the land of the brave. We're scared shitless, it looks to me like, Joe, and we prize our freedom and our democracy so much, we're afraid to go to the theater. We're afraid to go to an outdoor concert. We're allowing this to compromise ourselves in every way of public life, yet the dots aren't being connected.
Well, here's the real hypocrisy of this, is the gun militants say the purpose of the Second Amendment is to protect the First Amendment. So one of the things that they do is they say, well, we all have to have guns because the American federal government is tyrannical and it's going to get even worse. And when the day comes that we reach the tipping point when American soldiers and police are busting into our homes and we're turning into this fascist state, we're going to be able to resist that with our guns. And so we have to protect our rights with the Second Amendment, right? But here's what's really happening outside of that completely delusional way of thinking. What's really happening is more and more Americans are less willing to practice their First Amendment rights by going to large gatherings. I tell you, I have a 7-year-old son, and I think twice before I go to some kind of large community gathering, because I don't know if there's going to be gunfire there. So that's infringing upon my First Amendment rights. All right, and so that's but again, I see this APA article and I think, well, if people are so concerned, then they should be jumping on the bandwagon to do something about guns.
I hear you.
Being concerned about it and staying away isn't the answer.
I discount
being involved.
Yeah, the fact that people are buying these weapons to defend themselves against their government. I tell folks that say that your government has tactical nuclear weapons. You know that, don't you? I mean, and I know that you want these rifles and all that type of thing, but they're not going to be very much use against the most weaponized government in the history of the world. There's 400 million guns, but they're not very good against nukes. Let me bring this up on screen.
These people are just delusional. They're just delusional.
They are. It's a fetish. It's a gun fetish.
It is.
A record number of America's kids were injured or killed by gunfire in 2022. Again, these are things that a lot of people are not aware of, Joe. It was less than an hour into 2022, according to this reporting from USA Today, when the first child was shot. The 14-year-old girl was standing outside watching fireworks in St. Louis when a bullet hit her in the arm. In the year since, more than 6,000 children and teens were injured or killed in shootings, according to the nonprofit Gun Violence Archive. That's the most in a single year since the database began tracking 9 years ago. Now, my listeners on audio aren't going to be able to see this, but for those that are watching, you can see graphically what we're talking about here. The number of kids killed or injured in 2022 is the most on record. Now we have a total here. We have teens and then children. The children line isn't increasing quite as dramatically because they're not out in the world like the teens are. But look at these lines. Anybody that knows anything about graphing and statistics knows that this is wildly dramatic. This is a major trend line that we're looking at here, Joe, with these kids, and it's continuing. What's contributing to the rise in gun violence? The increase in firearm deaths and injuries among kids is being primarily driven by a large increase in homicides, said Mark Bryan, executive director of the Gun Violence Archive. That's partly the result of increasing access to firearms, said Dr. Lois Lee, an associate professor of pediatrics and emergency medicine at Harvard Medical School. Firearm purchases increased over the last 2 years, and some states eased rules on purchasing and carrying firearms, Lee said. A Supreme Court decision in June also made it easier to carry firearms and inspired an avalanche of lawsuits. And to your point, Joe, it's not just that we're firearms. We're not talking about squirrel guns here. We're talking about the most deadly machine gun type weaponry that's ever been devised. So this girl that was shot in the arm, and I don't know what the background on that is. I don't know what she was shot with, but most of these assault rifles, as an example, if you get shot with a single round, you're not going to survive. The bullets that come out of those things are intended to blow you apart upon hitting you just once. So that's where this homicide thing comes into play. If you get shot, you're going to die.
It used to be, I'd say 20 years ago, we were actually seeing one of the reasons why we were seeing a decline in homicides was because of emergency room interventions were improving. Now we were seeing aggravated assaults and attempted murders go up, but homicides were going down. But now with the type of weaponry we have, and it's assault weapons for sure, because those are extremely high velocity rounds, 3,000 feet a second. And they're just extremely destructive, which they're intended to be for purposes of warfare. But even the pistols now, it used to be back in the day, if you got into a fight with somebody, a gunfight, and you had a revolver and they had a revolver, and each person fired 6 times, probably each of them would miss 5. But then they're out of ammo. But today you have these very sophisticated, very well operating pistols like Glock and other 9mm. They carry 15 rounds and they don't jam. They're good guns. They fire really well. So it's the quality of the weaponry and accessibility, and so that's what we're dealing with here for sure. Yeah.
Let me ask you about this before we lose you today. We're going to be out of time here very shortly, Joe, but I talk about this all the time on the show. We talk about the genesis for this, what caused this, and I think it may be one of the few means I can think of to mitigate the carnage that's being created, and that is Hollywood. That's where a lot of this gun fetish, gun culture, I think, came from. A lot of these John Wayne type movies that have been made and the depictions of war and that type of thing that have come from Hollywood, which do not reflect reality,
It doesn't.
is what has changed America. The difference between us and some of these other countries that you're talking about around the world, and I think it may have come into play with a story like this. I see this: anger grows in Virginia City, where a first grader shot a teacher. What? Yeah, a lot of people are aware of this. Newport News, Virginia, Dateline AP. When a 6-year-old shot and wounded his first grade teacher in the shipbuilding city near Virginia's coast, the community reacted with collective shock. But the sentiment has percolated into rage from parents and particularly from teachers, with many lambasting school administrators Tuesday night for what they called a misguided emphasis on attendance and other education statistics over the safety of children and staff. Okay, again, I don't want to, when I got Joe on the line here, I don't want to spend too much time reading into this, but they believe that there are some things that can be done at the school level. But I believe that if these action heroes that people fawn over so much in this country, if they were to come out and take a stance on this gun violence, and I'm talking about everything from Matt Damon to Denzel Washington to who's that guy that was in Die Hard? He's kind of a gun nut too. If they were to come out and tell people and because they're so beloved and come out and say, Clint Eastwood's too old, but people like that, if they were to come out and say, gunplay in these movies is exactly that. It's play. I mean, it's supposed to be with blanks and toy guns. Now, we're finding out in that one instance with that famous actor that wasn't the case. He was charged with involuntary manslaughter last week. But I think Hollywood could go a long way if they would just take the guns out of the movies and be honest about what they are and the carnage that they cause. And I've been talking about that for some time. I would like to see at least some of the lefty actors come out and do that. Ben Affleck, people like that, but they don't even do that, Joe.
No, George, to your point, we saw this with smoking.
Yes.
Once
Yes.
smoking went down in movies, it helped to inspire cessation in smoking in the public. Now, there are other things as well. So now you can take a gun into a restaurant, but you can't smoke in the restaurant. And I'm glad you can't smoke in the restaurant. But, I have to tell you, I was a bit furious, if I could say it, with Matthew McConaughey after the Uvalde shooting, in which he stepped up to a presidential podium and talked about how, we all have to work together and let's sing Kumbaya. And, I'm sitting here wondering, well, how many movies have you made where your character used a gun to solve a problem?
Yeah.
So that I think that's I agree with you. I think so not only the news media, but the entertainment media have a role to play here. But with the smoking thing, they were pressed, they were pushed. A lot of the middle class wanted to see less smoking. And so they put pressure on the entertainment industry and politicians and others. Listen, the middle and upper middle classes are not being shot to death in the numbers that poor people and low income minorities are being shot. And so it's really going to take some compassion and some knowledge and some desire on their part to save the lives of people they don't know and are unlikely to know. That's the problem. George, before we go, can I just say one thing to anybody listening or watching?
Yeah.
Part of what I'm trying to do more speaking engagements around the state. And if anybody would like to get in touch with me, my Facebook site is easily accessible. My email is gorton44@gmail.com, gorton44@gmail.com. So I think a big part of this issue is that we have to increase public awareness. And one of the ways to do that is to go out and have conversations about gun violence.
Okay, let me put that up on the screen here. It's gorton44@gmail.com, correct?
Right. That's right.
All right, I'm making up a little banner here. Let me see if I've got that. Again, my typing is not the best. Let me see if I got that on screen. Does that look right there?
It does. Because despite all the evidence to the contrary, I'm an optimist. I believe America can solve this problem. All the evidence is against it, but I believe we can do it. And here's the deal. The minute the middle class and the upper middle classes decide that they've had enough, it'll happen. Just like smoking.
Yeah, and the media's got a lot to do it with. Hollywood's got a lot to do it. I mean, the
They do.
machismo factor is always going to be there. People want to see heroes. They want to see strong men. Well, they need to come out and say, you know, you want to be strong, you want to be a hero. You don't solve problems with a gun. And like I tell people, and pardon my language here, but any pussy can pull a pistol out of his pants. That's not a strong man.
No.
That's not a hero. That's a coward that solves issues that way. I mean, if you want to go mano a mano with somebody, either on the playing field or, you know, on the streets, you go mano a mano with them. You don't resort to a gun. That's what the man that's the weakest does. That's what the sissy does. He pulls out a gun and shoots the other guy. I would like to see more of that coming from Hollywood and out of our movies and out of our media, and make men strong that way, because the sense of empowerment in our society with gun ownership and the use of a gun is absolutely, no doubt, contributing to these issues that we face today, Joe.
Yes, I agree entirely. That's, and that's a message that has to come from consumers too, that,
Yeah.
we're not going to watch those movies. Now, those movies will show in other countries, France, Canada, so on and so forth. But the viewers of those movies cannot easily then transfer their identification with the gun, with the gun guy on the movie into real life, because it's not as easy to go out and find a gun to do that with. All right. But in America, look, the 6-year-old got a gun.
Yeah. I've got the 6-year-old, and oh my God, look at this one here. Man is arrested on live TV after his toddler son is seen roaming a hallway with a gun. Now, if this isn't a slice of Americana, I don't know what is, folks.
Oh
Maybe
my God, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's
This is a video. Now, this is a still from it. I put the arrow there. This is the
like
gun.
this was like watching a horror movie.
Yes.
Where the terrible thing is going to happen and you're just cringing the whole time.
My God, if Indiana police, whose work was being broadcast live on cable TV. Now, that's Americana too. I mean, a reality show live on television. This is really beyond belief. Arrested a man after neighbors reported his toddler son was roaming an apartment hallway with a loaded gun, officials said. The video was shown Saturday night on Reel's On Patrol Live as Beech Grove police answered a call about a boy clad only in a diaper, alleged to be walking around unsupervised and pointing a firearm. Again, this is a still from this kid out in the hallway. Well, when police responded, they didn't find anything. They're about to leave, but the building, when another neighbor approached them and shared video shot from his doorbell camera of a gun-toting boy in a diaper live showed. And again, that is America. Everybody's got these Ring doorbell monitors and stuff. Why? We're afraid. We're fearful. I can't believe that people will choose to live like this just to keep the guns that we have. So that's how they caught the guy. But a doorbell camera, a reality show, and a 1-year-old in a diaper waving a pistol around in a hallway.
Can I say something just for a second about the toddler?
Yeah.
So if people will go to the National Gun Violence Memorial, it's an organization that does a lot of stuff on gun violence, but part of what you'll find there are the photographs of people who have been shot to death. And they have a special segment of just children between the ages of infant and 12. All right. And when you scroll through those photographs, which I encourage everyone to do, so it'll make this more real to them, you will see several little toddlers who unintentionally shot themselves to death because there was a gun in the home. And so this is the other thing. People have guns, they don't secure them. And so when I was watching this video, part of what I was thinking was, if people only knew how often, people were like going crazy about this video, right? Fair enough. But if people only knew how often this really happens in the country and the child is killed, okay? Hopefully people would step up, and express some outrage over this. In this instance, the child wasn't even, thankfully, thank God it wasn't killed, but all too often the child dies. and it's just horrific. I could tell you
Yeah.
so many stories about
Oh,
that.
I know it, Joe. I know you can, man. And good on you for having devoted so much of your adult life trying to do something about this. And I just make a call to everyone to walk it like you talk it. People will be
Yeah.
first to say, I'll do anything for kids. I'd do anything for my kids. Okay, man. If you care about, how about this? Let's do something. Let's keep them alive. Let's keep them from being blown apart by these bullets that when they hit you, it's like being hit with a high velocity pop can. It blows you apart. How about let's start there. Let's walk
And
it
that's the
like
and
we
that's
talk
the
it.
start of it, because then the pain and agony ripples out through the
Yeah,
family and the
right.
community. You know, I once said in my juvenile delinquency class, at the beginning of my juvenile delinquency class, I say, now we all love our children, right? We all love our children. We can agree on that. But do we love America's children? You know, and so
Mhm.
far the evidence is that we do not. If it's not our child, you know, all right, not going to worry about it. And until that
All right,
changes,
Joe.
yeah.
No, no, go ahead. I was going to say we are running out of time here. I want to
No,
give you the last word
that's
though.
that.
Yeah, go ahead and mention your web addresses, anything that you want to. Just give us a
Well,
last
I'll
word here
just
as
say if
we.
people are, you know, I'm on Facebook. Brady United, the Iowa chapter of Brady United has a Facebook page. I need help. You know, I need people to help participate and join with me to try to remedy the gun violence problem in Iowa. So yeah, join the cause. We really need you.
All right, pal. That's great, Joe. We'll have you back on. I mean, the horrific part about this is again, it's not ending. This is going to happen again. There's going to be big news that we all don't want to see, and when we do, we'll revisit this. We'll continue to try to create awareness and do what we can with great Joe Gorton of Brady United against gun violence here in Iowa. Joe, thanks again for coming on this podcast.
Well,
By
thank you,
George.
George, and for everything that you do on all sorts of issues that we need your voice. So thank you so much.
That's great, pal. Really appreciate that. And people, if you want to see more of Joe Gorton, if you want to see the other shows that I've had with him or any of my episodes, go to podcastbygeorge.com. They're all archived there. And you can also sign up by clicking a badge or an icon to be notified when each new live stream drops. If you're liking the videos on Facebook and YouTube, go there, subscribe, ring the notification bell on YouTube. They'll let you know when a new show goes out. And then if you like listening to them, click the iTunes badge as an instant, the icon there for iTunes or Spotify or the iHeartRadio app, and you'll get the audio versions as soon as they release on Podcast by George. But that is going to do it. That's going to wrap it up, folks. That's all there is. And there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.